I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USA Watchdog.com. With us, my next guest would likely tell you that, listen, what's going on in Washington with the Trump administration being under attack by what some say is the intelligence community, and that he is under full attack. It's pretty simple to see by the media, by the deep state, by the Democrats, whatever. He would say that should all take a very distant back seat to what is going on with climate change and geoengineering, the things that are forcing dramatic changes in our climate. I'm talking to Dane Wigington of geoengineeringwatch.org. Dane Wigington, thank you for joining us from California.
Thank you, Greg, and your introduction is right on target in the sense that how long can humans survive without habitat? And if we have an issue that's the greatest, mathematically the greatest single assault ever launched by the human race against Earth's natural life support systems, why wouldn't we deal with that first and foremost above anything else?
You've said in the past that, listen, and one of the things that you don't want to do is turn people off. And that you've said, listen, all the stuff that has caused some sort of heating of the planet, or whether it's the deforestation or the burning of fossil fuels, yes, that has happened. But the biggest thing facing us right now is the geoengineering, the solar radiation management, the chemtrails. I mean, in North Carolina, they've been spraying like with reckless abandon. I mean, they got big stripes across the sky. They have crisscross patterns. I've seen all that here, and you all probably have seen that as well. That is not condensation trails. That just can't be. I mean, any thinking person can't think that, oh, yeah, condensation trails. You see one plane putting a big stream of stuff out. You see another plane with nothing coming out of it, hardly, a little bitty tail in the sky. Geoengineering and solar radiation management, that's what you say is tipping the planet over right now, and at a very alarming rate. Well, there's one report out there that's on your site that says we have less than a decade before the planet turns into Mars.
And that's not my data. That data is coming from the best, most recognized frontline Arctic methane climate scientists. And methane is the issue that's not being reported either. And that's the linchpin on our collective coffin if the atmosphere fills with enough methane. But I don't want to downplay the damage done to the planet, because we've lopped down over half Earth's forests, we've poisoned the oceans, we've paved the planet. Those are all significant sources of damage. But the single greatest assault on Earth's natural systems at this time is climate engineering. And when we have that type of intervention going on, Greg, it prevents the planet from responding to the damage done. The forests on a warming planet would normally begin to thrive as the rainfall increases. That's not happening because the rainfall is toxic. And we know this. And with everything I say, Greg, I want to express this to your listeners. I don't ask them to believe a word I'm saying, but I do ask them, if they claim to care about their children, their children's futures, their own futures, to investigate what I'm saying, to look past the special interest produced headlines and look at the frontline data. The cryosphere is imploding right now. And I would ask this: if we don't have any habitat, how long are we going to be here? Ecosystems are collapsing all over the globe. Lots of causes for that. I don't deny that. Lots of anthropogenic, i.e. human causes. But climate engineering, the intentional intervention in Earth's climate and life support systems, is the single greatest threat and most immediate threat we face right now, mathematically speaking, short of nuclear cataclysm. And we obviously have some of that happening with Fukushima right now as well. But even with threats like Fukushima, Greg, if we're inhaling toxic particles that are connected to climate engineering programs, aluminum, barium, strontium, toxic heavy metals that we know are coming down in the air column. And by the way, we just had a statistic out of UK. Dementia is the single greatest cause of mortality in UK. Single greatest cause. Statistics are close to that in the US. If we can't think clearly, what challenges will we face? So again, we're back to climate engineering, the all-out assault against the web of life. We have to face this issue, and we need everyone to face it with us.
Brennan was talking about this to his New World Order buddies at the Council on Foreign Relations. I actually linked to that in the last interview. So if you go to my website, you scroll back down and find where you were on Dane Wigington on the last time. You can see it for himself. Brennan, the former CIA director, talking about solar radiation management and geoengineering. So it's not like it's some fake science. It's a real science. This has been going on for a long time. And that's what people don't get. I mean, you brought up the papers that you had with the Senate talking about all the collusion between countries. Above all other things, in '78, they were talking about how that this supersedes everything, even war, to collude about the climate change. But it was going on in the mid '40s. They knew that the planet was heating up then. Tell me about a bit about the history of this going on.
If we go back to the start of the Industrial Revolution, we see an atmosphere loading with aerosols and loading with greenhouse gases, and those two can offset each other. By the time we reached 1945, there was very significant heating, and that's when the climate engineering was first deployed. Many of your listeners might remember the unexplainable leveling off of that heating from 45 to 75. Climate scientists could not figure out what was happening. They didn't know climate engineering was going on. It had an effect at first before the negative consequences kicked in. But as the greenhouse gas buildup continued, which includes methane, the climate engineers, the destruction they were causing with the spraying of particulates in the atmosphere. So your listeners understand, Greg, a primary element of climate engineering, solar radiation management, is to fill the atmosphere with light scattering particles to deflect some of the sun's energy. That has massive consequences. But as those consequences begin to kick in the mid to late 70s, and the greenhouse gas buildup continued, temperatures continue to rise. Many people don't understand these scenarios that have happened. What does the military-industrial complex do? They double down. They just do more. They just spray more. By '98, we had the warmest year ever recorded on the planet. What happened? They doubled down again, increased the programs again to block more of the sun. And this has continued to this date as we're logging more and more warm years. The consequences of climate engineering, shredding the ozone layer, disrupting the hydrological cycle, toxifying the entire planet, all those consequences are massively manifesting on the planet, and the military-industrial complex just continues to double down. So where do we go from here if we stay on this current course? Habitats are collapsing around the globe. We have boreal forests dying. And although there's many causes, again, we have climate engineering at the core of so many of those causes, including ozone destruction and so forth, that when you intervene with Earth's natural systems, you get a horrible result, and that's where we're headed. So, Greg, people wonder, if things are so bad, how come the shelves are so stocked with food in the United States? Why is that? Because the United States is importing unimaginable amounts of food from other countries that are starving to death right now. Tens of billions of dollars worth of food are being imported from abroad to keep U.S. shelves stocked, to keep the U.S. population pacified until the last possible moment. All I'm asking people to do is look at the frontline facts and don't turn away from this issue, because you do so at your own peril.
Can that explain some of the crazy temperatures? And I'm holding up a map that you actually sent me here, and I'm going to go full screen on me. And it's a map of the United States, and on basically half of the United States from about, I don't know, western western Kansas on over is really dark red, and then out on the west where you are is blue. So you have these dramatic changes of temperature. Can you explain this map? There's one band in the middle that's white right here. Is that the normal temperature, and that's below normal, and that's way above normal? Is that what that means?
What you're looking at is the latest NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, long lead forecast. Who does NOAA's maps? Raytheon. Raytheon, who is completely neck deep in the climate engineering program. So you have the foxes running the hen house. You have Raytheon doing all the weather modeling for the National Weather Service and NOAA. You have Lockheed Martin, also in weather modification, doing the weather modeling for the FAA. So you have them producing maps that show what the scheduled weather is. Literally, the map you're looking at, because of the flow of moisture off the Pacific, it's an attempt to try to cool part of the U.S. And so that moisture is aerosolized, it's sprayed, it's saturated with tiny particles called aerosols. And that diminishes and disperses the amount of rain that falls in the West and expands that moisture across the country. Now, just because people think the West has gotten some rain this year, that doesn't mean there wouldn't have been more had this not been going on. So the map you're looking at indicates an attempt to try to float some of this moisture across the country. But as it gets further from the ocean, the moisture diminishes. You see the temperatures heating up. And those temperatures you're seeing indicates for the next 4 to 5 days, you're going to see record temperatures all over the country. And it's happening all over the world. Again, the primary purpose of climate engineering, Greg, is to attempt to hide the severity of damage done to the climate already, while at the same time inflicting yet more damage and toxifying everything, including every breath we take. So if people should ask themselves why they don't see blue skies almost ever anymore. At best, you see a baby blue sky that's still saturated with aerosols, but most often we see hazy, wispy, white canopy above. I mean, this is solar radiation management, and it's called global dimming. That's a science term. 20 to 30% of the sun's direct rays that reached the surface 5 decades ago now no longer do. And I challenge people, look up what I'm saying. Please don't believe a word I'm saying. Look it up. That's a lot of sun to block, 20 to 30% globally. That's what these programs are designed to do.
Well, aren't these people living in the same world? Are they trying to kill us? I mean, don't they have to live in the same world? And do all the elites think that they're going to get the golden ticket to the Willy Wonka factory and live underground for the rest of their lives? I mean, not everybody's going to go. I mean, the elites that are watching this, and many do, if you think you're going to get a golden Willy Wonka ticket, you're sadly mistaken, aren't they? I mean, isn't that a limited group of people that they're going to try to take underground? Am I wrong?
Your point is extremely valid, and we know that they've been stocking up for these underground facilities. They're called DUMBs, deep underground military bases. This is not science fiction. This is reality. All of this can be looked up, and we checked with one of the main freeze-dried food suppliers some time back who took their product offline retail because they were supplying military. And this is what's happening, this big buildup for going underground for those who think they're going to ride this out. And I would point out in previous mass extinctions on planet Earth that you and I have talked about off the air, which were not as severe as what we're heading into now, the equilibrium periods were some 10 to 20 million years. Nobody can ride that out underground. So we're on the fast track for a planet that will not support life. And I base that on solid frontline data. I am not the only person. The frontline Arctic scientists are saying exactly what I'm saying, exactly what I've been saying for 10 plus years. And if people simply look at statistics, Greg, over the last 40 years, we've lost 2/3 of Earth's wildlife populations, 2/3. Fisheries are collapsing around the globe. We have dead marine life washing up from Australia to Hawaii to South America to Florida, everywhere. The oceans are dying. They're converting to what's called Canfield Ocean. And yet we're watching all this theater that's created to distract us from what's really happening around the globe. Power structure knows this is going on. They know they can't hide it much longer. And what's their likely hole card that they'll play at the last moment when they can't hide it any longer? World War III. And they're maneuvering for that right now, are they not?
Well, you had President Trump say that Lindsey Graham and John McCain, all they want to do is create World War III. Yes. There's a real world quote. Call that a coincidence? I don't know. Is this the reason why we've had these extreme temperatures? You were telling me that in New York, for example, that it was 65 degrees one day and it snowed a day or two later. Can you explain these big wild swings in temperatures?
Weather whiplash, absolutely. And we have the paid liars, and I wish I could use a more diplomatic term, but people at, for example, Weather Channel, that Weather Channel is owned by the corporate power structure, Bain Capital, Blackstone, etc. We have Rothschild's ownership of some of the other weather disseminating agencies. Monsanto owns others. Again, we have the foxes running the henhouse. We have people at Weather Channel trying to explain away the completely engineered weather as natural. And at this point, can we call them anything but paid liars? So the weather whiplash. People should understand something is radically wrong in New York a week plus ago when we went from all-time record-shattering high temperatures to snow in less than 24 hours. And let me give you a more extreme example of that, Greg. Amarillo, Texas, May 1st, 2013, all-time record high on the ground, 100 degrees on the ground. It snowed the next day. This kind of weather whiplash can only be created by climate engineering, and one of the primary aspects of climate engineering is called chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. What's that mean? It means that the climate engineers, by spraying ice nucleating particles from jet aircraft, as they do with the rest of the aerosols, over precipitation, can chemically convert that precipitation to frozen precipitation. We have the patents for this. We have lab tests proving it that you can see on Geoengineering Watch articles. So that's how they're able to chemically cool down zones, by creating a cold, dense layer of air that settles down to ground level. That's why these temperatures go from such incredible highs to such incredible lows. And we saw, even at the same time we had this snowstorm happening in the East Coast, we had temperatures in Oklahoma of 100 degrees in the dead of winter, February 11th in Oklahoma, 100 degrees. We don't see media reporting on that. So again, these chemically engineered cool downs that the Weather Channel theatrically names to dramatize them and make people think that the planet is cooler than it is, they come at the cost of a worsened overall warming, a shredded ozone layer, contaminated air column, contaminated waters. Climate engineering is an all-out assault against the web of life. It's a tool for the military-industrial complex, and they're not going to let it go unless we bring this issue to critical mass and make them stop.
I know your lawsuit is ongoing. It's an arduous, Herculean project. But one of the things you were telling me in the interview, that one of the things you're doing now is trying to do Freedom of Information Act for you for the gag orders at NOAA and the weather thing. Tell me a little bit about that. You're trying to see why they put a gag order in, I guess.
Again, those who would deny this issue because they've been programmed to deny anything that's threatening to their reality come up with the excuse that if this was really going on, we'd have all these climate scientists speaking out. And they should challenge that notion if that's their conclusion. Because we have, in the case of National Weather Service and NOAA, we have illegal federal gag orders on the weathermen. How can they possibly speak out? So we're talking about, Greg, government scientists that have no First Amendment protection to begin with. And now they have an illegal federal gag order on them. Before the gag order was placed, I was face to face with a NOAA scientist that told me to my face, and I'm quoting verbatim, she said, "We know these programs are going on. We're alarmed as hell. We don't know what to do. We have no First Amendment protection." Now they have a gag order on top of that. Of course, these people aren't going to be lining up to speak out. It means the loss of their job or far, far worse. So this is something that it's up to us, the population, to bring to light. And I challenge people, use your sense of reason. How can you have skies that appear somewhat clear one day and grid patterns the next day with the same atmospheric conditions? And climate engineering, the express application named in patents, is to spray particulates out of jet aircraft to saturate the atmosphere and block some of the sun's incoming thermal energy. And this is the insanity of the climate science community in academia right now, Greg, that are paid by these corporations to come up with these sort of insane mitigations, just like we see, Greg, in the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industrial complex. How many commercials, I've mentioned this before, do we not see where when you hear the list of consequences for the particular new pharmaceutical that claims to address a certain ailment, and by the time you hear the consequences, you think, who in their right mind would do this? We have the same thing happening in our atmosphere right now, and if it continues, the consequences will be total for all of us on the very near term.
And you're talking scientifically speaking. One report says 9 years, that life could be extinct in 9 years as we know it.
What's important for people to understand is this equation could not be more nonlinear. The planet and the biosphere that supports our lives, just like the human body, although very resilient, when it reaches the point of breakdown, that breakdown ensues extremely rapidly. I would challenge people to search animal die-offs 2016 or animal die-offs 2017. There's separate lists. And there's a website that compiles those lists. It's staggering. Every single day, you have thousands of tons of dead sea life washing up somewhere. The oceans die, we die. If the ozone layer is destroyed, we die. And ozone layer destruction is increasing rapidly. In fact, Greg, as we talked about off the air, the former NASA veteran, 40-year veteran aeronautics engineer that's metering UV for us, UV radiation, if people think the sun feels hot on their skin, it's because it does. He gives us 9 to 10 years. If there was no other problems but the ozone destruction, he gives us 9 to 10 years. Now let's add all the other problems on top of that. And we're facing converging cataclysms. So when people are focused on jobs, economies, the retirements accounts, how much will any of that matter if we have a planet that doesn't support life, if we've lost our habitat, if every breath we take is laden with toxic metals that's making us sicker and dumber by the day? And we see the stats. I gave the stat on the UK. The greatest cause of mortality is dementia. Shouldn't that shock people, Greg?
I want to move on to your salient point. Your salient point, just like I think Bill Clinton or somebody once said that when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging, and when you find yourself in a converging cataclysm, stop spraying. Wouldn't that just be the simple, best way to try to let the Earth repair itself? That's what you told me. Will you explain that? Is that your goal, just to get them to stop what they're doing?
That is my only goal, to bring this issue to light and to a halt. And as you stated correctly in the beginning of this show, we know we have collusion between all the major powers. We have Senate documents 750 pages long to prove that any of your listeners can look at and read, where it states on the document that even countries that are normally adversarial with opposing interests will and are cooperating on the climate engineering issue, each for their own agenda, that keep their populations pacified and oblivious to the fact that ecosystems are imploding all over the globe, to keep business as usual, if you will, by confusing and dividing the population in regard to the true state of the climate, creating chemically engineered cool downs. And Greg, as I sent you, for those that doubt that you can chemically create a snowstorm out of what should have been a rainstorm, Popular Science and Fox News even covered that. Your listeners can search Chinese scientists create artificial snowstorm, and they'll find coverage from those mainstream sources. They're backing off of such coverage now because, of course, they don't want people to really know this is going on. So, again, I challenge people to consider the fact that if our life support systems on the planet are completely decimated, if the planet's not allowed to respond on its own to the damage done by human activity, we're not going to be here much long. It'll be game over, and that's a statistical, mathematical fact.
I want to bring in Antarctica. Some people say that that we have a big global cooling going on, and that we're entering to another ice age. That the poles are shifting, and you say no. You told me in the pre-interview mathematically it's crazyville. There's no way. Is that right? In Antarctica, the ice is melting and raising the sea levels. Correct?
And here's what I ask people. You're correct. And here's what I ask them to do. Please do not believe me. Please look it up for yourself. And we have film footage to prove this with films like Chasing Ice. Statistically, right now, today, record low ice, North Pole and South Pole, record low cryosphere overall, record low ice deposits all over the globe. Greenland is melting at an astounding rate as well. I'm asking people to simply investigate the facts and not believe some headline that many choose to believe. And climate engineering, in the attempt to hide these facts, is making the situation far worse, not better. So we face what we will probably see, what's called a blue ocean event, Greg, which means an ice-free Arctic at the end of the summer. If it doesn't happen this year, it will likely happen next year. When that happens, you can't hide that. When you can't hide that, you can't hide climate engineering.
Stop. How high will that raise the seas, the ice-free Arctic? That's in the North Arctic.
In regard to the Arctic, it's important for people to understand you're talking about sea ice. So like the ice cubes in your glass, when they melt, the glass doesn't overflow because you're already displacing the water. But here's what happens when the ice-free Arctic occurs. Now you have a vast region of the globe that instead of reflecting 90% of the sun's thermal energy begins to absorb it. The dark ocean absorbs 90%. So you have a complete reversal of the albedo of the planet. So now you have the oceans that are already astronomically warm. I checked this morning, Greg, still many sections of the Arctic Ocean 25 degrees above normal. That's astounding for ocean temperatures. We have temperatures off the coast of Japan right now, 34 degrees above normal. This is inconceivable. So as that ocean warms, it thaws formerly frozen methane deposits on the sea floor, methane hydrate. That methane is already thawing, migrating through the water column, hitting the atmosphere, migrating into our skies. Methane is lighter than air. Methane is 100 to 120 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas, and nobody talks about methane. It's covering the atmosphere right now like a layer of glass, trapping heat. The climate engineers are, again, continuing to, in the attempt to hide what's unfolding, they're making it worse, not better. So in regard to raising sea levels, that's not a direct result of the loss of Arctic sea ice, but we have Antarctica melting now rapidly, Greenland melting so rapidly, as we talked about on the phone, Greg, off air. The amount of ice loss off Greenland is so massive that Greenland is experiencing what's called glacial rebound. The Greenland landmass is actually beginning to rise up out of the ocean because of the loss of weight from ice. And we're seeing, for those that doubt this is happening, I challenge them, search Miami pumping or Miami flooding from sea level rise. There's article after article. Miami's spending, as we talked about off the air, $500 million, $500 million just to keep a few neighborhoods dry. This is a futile effort, Greg. It's like stopping a tidal wave with a Dixie cup. It's not going to last very long, and people need to understand there's no hiding this for much longer.
Antarctica, there's also a big chunk of ice, I want to say the size of Delaware, that's going to slide off into the ocean. And then you're going to see sea levels rise. Tell me how that could slide off, and how high could sea levels rise? You were telling me a couple of 100 feet.
Now, here's again where I challenge people to not believe anything I say, but look it up. So if they look up ice glaciation loss in Antarctica, they'll see photographs that look like something out of the Day After Tomorrow movie. Greg, you remember that movie, I'm sure.
Yep.
It's a massive crack in the ice shelf that's about 80 to 90 miles long, and yes, this massive chunk, record-sized chunk, is about to break off. But what's even more important than that happening is that's the cleat that holds the glaciers on the land mass. And once that happens, they start to slide off much more rapidly. All of this is part of the feedback loops that, again, the climate engineers have been desperately trying to hide since the mid-1940s. They have made a decision for all of us, Greg, an irreversible decision to experiment with our planet's life support systems with consequences that will soon be total if they continue. The total sea level rise. Antarctica contains about 197 feet of total sea level rise if that ice is completely melted, and it's heading that direction. There's no shutting this off. That will take time, but there's no shutting it off. Greenland, 21 to 24 feet. The rest of the Earth's glaciers, 10 to 15 feet. You're talking about, depending on the studies you look at, 230 to 240 feet of total sea level rise. It only takes 2 or 3 feet to cause catastrophic damage around the globe, and it's happening right now. Florida's aquifers are being inundated with seawater that's migrating inland. It's happening right now. Bangladesh, we have the Bay of Bengal. It's collapsed. The ecosystem, the fisheries there have collapsed. What are those people going to eat? We're seeing fisheries all over the globe collapse. The fisheries along the whole North American West Coast have been shut down by federal agencies. Do we hear that on the news? Don't hear anything about it. And we are in the fast track again for a completely different reality, Greg, and it will seem distant to people until it hits them between the eyes. And I would argue the power structure will hide it as long as they can. And at the moment in time this all unfolds, it's going to come like a tornado in the night.
Your website has no advertising. You just do this on donations. I would encourage people, if they believe in what you're doing, I do, I would to go to the website. I think there's a donation button in the upper left-hand corner, also snail mail also to your site. You do this all without any advertising. If you go on there, there's no videos, there's no coins, you sell nothing. And so I would just encourage people to, there's also tons of information at geoengineeringwatch.org. Dane, thank you for joining us today and updating us on what's going on with your lawsuit, the planet, how bad things are, the cover-up, the gag orders. It's unbelievable. It's just really kind of unbelievable when you add it up all together. Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org. Thank you for joining us today on usawatchdog.com.
If I could put one more caveat on that, Greg, if I may.
Go ahead. Fire away.
I'm not asking people to believe anything I say. I'm simply asking them to investigate our documented research source data and to decide for themselves what's really happening, what they're not being told. And all our efforts go toward raising awareness. Any resources we get go toward activism awareness. All of us have a part to play in this scenario, this drama that we face. We must all make our voices heard, effectively and efficiently convey data to others. That is our only goal, to bring this issue to light, not to ask anybody to believe anything we're saying, but to investigate, help us bring this issue to light, the greatest untold story on the planet today, period.
Well, and the best thing you could do is just stop spraying. I mean, it comes down to something really simple. Hey, knock it off. Stop it.
Spraying and radio frequency microwave transmissions, that's another massive part of this equation that people need to understand as well. If they're worried about cell phones, if they're worried about radio frequency transmissions, the greatest and most damaging source of all is related to climate engineering. It's not just HAARP in Alaska, but I sent you maps of the whole country is a grid of radio frequency microwave transmitters that are used to manipulate the atmospheric particulates, and it is bombarding us in very dangerous radio frequency transmissions. So it's all the above. Everything related to climate manipulation, intervention must be stopped. If it's not stopped and we stay in the current track, Greg, as I stated earlier, it will be game over in the short term if we continue on this track. And we have lots more problems to deal with. I'm not saying this is the only one. But mathematically,
it's the biggest.
Mathematically speaking, this is the single greatest leap we could take in the right direction. Expose and stop the climate engineering, which is weather warfare, which is biological warfare. to stop these programs in their tracks, to bring them to light. And we can only do that if we raise enough awareness to make military personnel know what they're involved with, that they are literally pulling the noose around their necks, their children's necks, and they're being told they're doing something that's saving the planet. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And we need to wake them up to the fact that they are pounding the nails into our collective coffins. We need them to stop participating in these programs.
Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org. Go to the site. There's a donation button, a way to send snail mail and donate on PayPal up in the upper right-hand corner. Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org. Thank you for joining us today on usawatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg.
I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to usawatchdog.com. With us, my next guest would likely tell you that, listen, what's going on in Washington with the Trump administration being under attack by what some say is the intelligence community, and that he is under full attack. It's pretty simple to see by the media, by the deep state, by the Democrats, whatever. He would say that should all take a very distant back seat to what is going on with climate change and geoengineering, the things that are forcing dramatic changes in our station or the burning of fossil fuels. Yes, that has happened, but the biggest thing facing us right now is the geoengineering, the solar radiation management, the chemtrails. I mean, in North Carolina, they've been spraying like with reckless abandon. I mean, they got big stripes across the sky. They have crisscross patterns. I've seen all that here, and you all probably have seen that as well. That is not condensation trails. That just can't be. I mean, any thinking person can't think that, oh, yeah, condensation trails. You see one plane putting a big stream of stuff out. You see another plane with nothing coming out of it, hardly, a little bitty tail from the sky. Geoengineering and solar radiation management, that's what you say is tipping
at this time is climate engineering. And when we have that type of intervention going on, Greg, it prevents the planet from responding to the damage done. The forests on a warming planet would normally begin to thrive as the rainfall increases. That's not happening because the rainfall is toxic. And we know this. And with everything I say, Greg, I want to express this to your listeners. I don't ask them to believe a word I'm saying, but I do ask them, if they claim to care about their children, their children's futures, their own futures, to investigate what I'm saying, to look past the special interest produced headlines and look at the frontline data. The cryosphere is imploding right now. And I would
climate. I'm talking to Dane Wigington of geoengineeringwatch.org. Dane Wigington, thank you for joining us from California.
Thank you, Greg. And your introduction is right on target in the sense that how long can humans survive without habitat? And if we have an issue that's mathematically the greatest single assault ever launched by the human race against Earth's natural life support systems, why wouldn't we deal with that first and foremost above anything else?
You've said in the past that, listen, and one of the things that you don't want to do is turn people off. And that you've said, listen, all the stuff that has caused some sort of heating of the planet, or whether it's the deforested planet over right now and at a very alarming rate. Well, there's one report out there that's on your site that says we have less than a decade before the planet turns into Mars.
And that's not my data. That data is coming from the best, most recognized frontline Arctic methane climate scientists. And methane is the issue that's not being reported either. And that's the linchpin on our collective coffin if the atmosphere fills with enough methane. But I don't want to downplay the damage done to the planet, because we've lopped down over half Earth's forests, we've poisoned the oceans, we've paved the planet. Those are all significant sources of damage. But the single greatest assault on Earth's natural systems